He found out his wife was still with her AP while begging him to take her back, and it changes everything. She got a message today that could end a 3-month relationship in a single screenshot. One friend, one Facebook group, one anonymous post, and suddenly everything this couple had built together was hanging by a thread. And the worst part is, he had absolutely no idea it was coming. So here is the full situation. This guy has been dating his girlfriend for just under 3 months. Things are going well. He is actually about to spend an entire week at her place, like packed bags, cleared schedule, fully committed to being present and accounted for. He had probably been looking forward to it, that easy kind of anticipation you feel when you are still in the early part of something good and every day together still feels like a small gift. And then out of nowhere, one of her friends sends her a screenshot from one of those Facebook groups, the kind where people post photos of guys they are seeing and ask whether anyone else is dating the same person. You know the groups. They exist in every city, in every friend circle, and they have saved some people from genuinely terrible situations. But they have also destroyed things that did not deserve to be destroyed. And in this case, the post was about him. An anonymous member had posted his photo and was asking if anyone else knew this guy, claiming that he had made plans with them to go out to dinner that very week. Now let us just sit with that for a second. He is literally about to spend the entire week at her house. His bag is probably already half packed. His schedule is already cleared. There is no dinner happening with anyone else. There is no second woman. There is no shadow calendar running quietly in the background. But his girlfriend does not know that in her gut right now. Right now she is just a person sitting somewhere staring at a screenshot with his face on it and a total stranger claiming he made plans with her. That gap between what is actually true and what the image in front of her is suggesting, that is the entire problem. And here is the part that makes this so much heavier than your average misunderstanding. His girlfriend has been cheated on before. She has real, lived experience with partners who looked her in the eye and told her everything was fine while running an entirely different life just out of view. She knows what it felt like to believe someone completely and then discover that belief was being used against her. So when this screenshot landed in her hands, it did not just raise a question. It detonated something deep and old inside her. It pulled up every wound that had never fully closed, every moment she replayed afterward wondering how she missed the signs, every quiet fear she had probably carried into this new relationship and been working hard to keep at bay. She was not just reacting to a post. She was reacting to her entire history arriving without warning on a Tuesday afternoon. He is asking how he can help her see that this is a hoax. And I appreciate that he is framing it that way, because the instinct to prove innocence immediately is so completely human. When someone accuses you of something you did not do, everything in you wants to open your hands and show them there is nothing there. But I want to gently push back on that framing, because the goal here is not just to present evidence and close the case like it is some kind of courtroom proceeding. The goal is to actually walk her back from a place of genuine fear, to reach her in the emotional place she is currently in, and those two things require very different approaches. Evidence is a tool. But the hand that holds it out matters just as much as what the hand is holding. Let us start with the evidence side of things, because it is genuinely strong. He is spending the whole week at her place. Not an evening. Not a weekend. An entire week. That is not the behavior of someone who is secretly juggling dinner dates with other women on the side. Think about the logistics alone. If he had made plans with someone else for this week, those plans would require him to be somewhere that is not his girlfriend's couch, her kitchen, her bed, her life. Every evening would need to be accounted for in a completely different location. The fact that his entire week was already spoken for, and that she already knew about it before the screenshot ever arrived, is a powerful and very specific piece of context. The alibi was already in place before the accusation existed. There is also the anonymous nature of the post itself, which deserves some real and sustained attention. These Facebook groups, as well-intentioned as they sometimes are and sometimes they genuinely are, have a well-documented history of being misused in ways that cause serious collateral damage. People post about the wrong person by accident because two guys have similar photos or similar names. People post out of jealousy or spite, targeting someone who rejected them or moved on from them. Someone who went on one date with a guy and felt humiliated can post about him just to watch something burn. Someone with a grudge can submit a photo anonymously and then log off entirely while the person in that photo watches their relationship fall apart from a distance. The anonymity of the original post means there is zero accountability for the person who made it. They do not have to prove anything. They do not have to show receipts. They do not have to answer a single question. They just post and disappear while everyone else deals with the wreckage left behind. And honestly, the timing of this is suspicious entirely on its own terms. The same week he is supposed to be spending entirely at her house, an anonymous stranger appears claiming he made plans with them for that exact same week. That is either the most brazen and logistically impossible double life in human history, or it is someone who genuinely does not know his real schedule and made a claim that happens to be very easily disproven by the simple fact of where he already is. The math on the second option is significantly more convincing. But again, none of that evidence means anything if he just dumps it on her defensively the moment she brings it up. The way he presents himself in this conversation matters enormously. If he comes in with a list of reasons why the post is wrong, a rapid-fire rebuttal, a kind of controlled urgency to be believed, she might hear it not as honesty but as someone trying to shut down the conversation before it can breathe. People who have been betrayed before are often hyper-aware of exactly that kind of energy, because their previous partners were frequently very skilled at explaining things away. They know the rhythms of a person in damage control mode. And even when that damage control is completely legitimate, it can feel identical to what they have seen before. What he actually needs to do is lead with her feelings first. Not the facts. Not the alibi. Not even his own hurt at being accused of something he did not do. Her feelings. He needs to sit down with her and tell her that he understands why receiving something like this scared her. That given what she has lived through before, seeing his face in that group must have felt like the floor dropping out. That he is not going to stand there and minimize how upsetting it must have been to open a message and find that waiting for her. He needs to make her feel genuinely hurt before he makes her feel reassured. Those are two separate things, and the order in which they happen is not a small detail. Then, once there is some actual emotional space in the room, once she does not feel like she is being managed or redirected, he can walk through everything calmly and with full transparency. He can remind her of the week they already had planned together, something she knew about before any of this happened. He can offer to be as open as she needs him to be, showing her his phone, his calendar, his messages, whatever specific thing helps her feel grounded in reality rather than spinning in fear. Not because he owes her constant access to his private life as a general rule, but because in this specific moment, with this specific history that she carries inside her every single day, that kind of radical openness is genuinely an act of love. It is him saying out loud, "I have nothing to hide, and I understand that right now you need to actually see that rather than just hear me say it." He might also want to gently and carefully acknowledge that these Facebook groups, while they do serve a real and sometimes important purpose, are also imperfect tools operating without any real oversight. Anyone can post anything anonymously. There is no verification process. There is no requirement to provide a single piece of proof before potentially dismantling something real and good that two people have been building. The system itself has structural vulnerabilities, and it is worth naming that fact out loud without sounding like he is attacking the group or dismissing the entire concept, because if she is a member of that group it clearly means something to her and he does not want her to feel like he is trying to take away something she finds useful. The longer-term picture here is also worth at least acknowledging. 3 months is still a relatively new relationship, and if she carries significant trust wounds from past experiences with cheating, this is probably not the last time something is going to land wrong and trigger that part of her. That is not a criticism of her in any way. It is simply the reality of how old pain works inside us. It resurfaces. It gets activated by things that are not always proportional to what they actually represent. And the question for both of them going forward is whether they can build enough genuine safety and enough open communication between them to weather those moments together without the relationship threatening to fracture every single time something scary appears. This particular situation seems very solvable. The timeline is on his side, the alibi is effectively airtight, the suspicious timing undermines the original post, and he clearly cares about her enough to seek out the most thoughtful way to approach this. But the real work here is not proving his innocence like a case to be won. The real work is showing her, consistently and patiently over time, that she is genuinely safe with him. That is what she is actually hungry for beneath all of this. Not just the facts of one incident, but a pattern of honesty and presence and steadiness that eventually allows her nervous system to stop bracing for impact every time something unexpected happens. Here is where I land on this. He has not done anything wrong. He is about to spend an entire week with his girlfriend and some anonymous person on the internet decided to blow up his relationship with zero accountability and zero consequences for themselves. That is genuinely unfair, and it is completely reasonable for him to feel blindsided and frustrated by it. But his girlfriend is not the villain here either. She is scared. She is a person with a real history reacting to something that was specifically engineered, whether intentionally or not, to activate her deepest fears. And the fact that he immediately went looking for ways to help her through this rather than getting defensive about being accused says something genuinely good about who he is. What this relationship needs right now is a real, calm, and honest conversation where both of them feel safe enough to actually show up. Not a debate. Not a cross-examination where one person presents evidence and the other decides the verdict. A real conversation where he holds space for her fear without rushing past it, and she trusts him enough to actually listen to what he is saying once she has felt heard. The evidence is solidly on his side. The intention is clearly there. If she can let herself believe the timeline in front of her, and if he can stay patient and compassionate while she works her way through it, this does not have to be the thing that breaks them. The anonymous post might have been designed to cause damage. It only has real power if they let it pull them apart. He clearly does not want that. And from everything he has described, neither does she. So they should talk, actually talk, and then go spend that week together like they planned. She called off the engagement after her future mother-in-law booked a luxury vacation on her son's money. She woke up to 20 deleted messages from her best friend of 20 years and felt her stomach drop. That alone would be enough to end most friendships. But what came before those deleted messages, and what she was already carrying when they arrived, made them the final crack in something that had been quietly breaking for a long time. So here is the full story, because there is a lot of ground to cover and every single piece of it matters. This woman, who we will just call the narrator since the post is from her perspective, had a best friend named Dylan. 20 years of friendship. 2 decades of inside jokes, shared memories, knowing someone's family, being woven into each other's lives in that deep way that only comes with time. You do not spend 20 years with someone without absorbing them into the fabric of how you understand the world. You know how they take their coffee. You know what makes them laugh until they cannot breathe. You know the shape of their sadness. That kind of closeness is not built overnight and it does not dissolve easily. Which is exactly what makes what comes next so devastating. And then in the span of 36 hours, she discovered that essentially everything Dylan had ever told her about his life was a fabricated lie. The original post is in her profile history, and while we do not have every detail here, what we do know from this update is genuinely staggering. Dylan had lied about having terminal cancer. For 2 years. He had lied about having an ex-husband, and the person he described as that ex-husband was actually a man he had stalked and never even met in person. He had constructed an entirely false version of his life and presented it to his closest friends for the duration of what should have been a real, meaningful friendship. Not a single crisis, not a single dramatic chapter, not a single tearful confession over those 2 years was grounded in anything real. He had built a whole persona out of borrowed tragedy and invented pain, and he had done it convincingly enough that the people who loved him most had no idea. That is not a little white lie. That is not exaggerating a story to make yourself sound more interesting. That is a sustained, detailed, emotionally manipulative fabrication that caused real harm to real people who cared about him. Let me just say that out loud. He told her he had terminal cancer. For 2 years. She carried that. She worried about him. She showed up for him in the way you show up for someone you love who is dying. She probably rearranged her life around his needs. She probably held back things she wanted to say because she did not want to upset someone who was, as far as she knew, living on borrowed time. She gave him the kind of grace and patience that people reserve for the most fragile moments in a friendship. And none of it was real. After everything came out, she and Sam, who is Dylan's other closest friend, decided to slowly fade away rather than have a direct confrontation. They were still responding to his messages but pulling back, keeping things surface level. This was not a cowardly choice. It was a careful one. When you have just discovered that someone close to you has been performing an elaborate fiction for years, you do not always have the words yet. Sometimes you need time to figure out what you actually want to say before you say anything at all. And then Dylan, sensing the shift even if he did not know why, started escalating. More messages. More intensity. The frequency picked up. The emotional weight of each message grew heavier. He was reaching, the way people reach when they can feel something slipping away but cannot name what it is. And then came the morning she woke up to 20 deleted messages. She had actually seen the first 10 before she went to sleep, in her notification bar without opening them. They were about jewelry. Just Dylan talking about jewelry he liked. Mundane, almost surreal in its ordinariness given everything she was silently carrying at the time. And then she woke up and all 20 were gone. That moment of opening your phone and seeing a thread wiped clean, knowing you saw something before it disappeared, is its own particular kind of unsettling. When she asked him about it, he spun this whole story about a third party who told him his mother was having a heart issue, how he panicked for 2 hours, discovered it was a lie, and then deleted everything in a spiral of emotion. He said he wanted to, and I am paraphrasing here, kill the person who told him. He said he hates people. She saw right through it. Because she had already seen those first 10 messages. They were about jewelry. There was no emergency unfolding in those messages. No frantic energy, no distress bleeding through the words. Whatever the deleted 10 contained, it clearly was not the story he was now telling her. And combined with everything else she already knew, this was the moment she decided she could not do the slow fade anymore. She had to get out directly. She wrote him a long message. She told him she knew everything, that she knew all of it, that it had hurt her deeply, and that she hoped he would get help but that she could not be there while he figured that out. She chose her words carefully. She did not perform cruelty. She did not unload every lie back onto him in a list designed to humiliate. She just told him the truth, cleanly and with whatever steadiness she could gather in that moment. She hit send. He read it immediately. And before he could respond, she blocked him on every single platform she could think of. Except regular text messages. Of course she missed text messages. So a little while later, a message came through. And it was exactly what you would expect from someone who had just spent 20 years lying and suddenly had nowhere left to hide. He blamed Sam. He said Sam had poisoned her against him. He called her scum for walking away without a conversation. And then, most remarkably of all, he doubled down on every single lie. He said everything he had told her was true. He said he had never, ever lied. He actually said she was incapable of having a real conversation about the real world. That last part is almost impressive in its audacity. The man who fabricated terminal cancer, invented an ex-husband out of a stranger he had stalked, and sent 20 messages about jewelry before deleting them and blaming a fake family emergency, told her she was the one who could not handle reality. She ignored it. And honestly, that is the right call, but I want to acknowledge how hard that probably was. Because even when you know someone has lied to you in the most profound ways imaginable, there is still a part of you that spent 20 years loving them. There is still a voice somewhere underneath all the hurt that remembers the good days, the real laughs, the moments that felt genuine even if the context around them was fabricated. Ignoring that message is not the same as not feeling it. She felt it. She just chose not to feed it. The update gets even more layered from there. She had been keeping in contact with Dylan's family through all of this, sharing updates, making sure everyone who needed to know the truth actually knew it. That in itself took courage. Nobody wants to be the person delivering news that will fracture a family's understanding of someone they love. But she did it anyway, because the people around Dylan deserved to have accurate information. And then his sister-in-law told her that Dylan's brother had finally sat down and told Dylan directly that everyone had been talking, everyone knew everything, and the whole constructed reality he had been living in had collapsed. Apparently it did not go well. The family hopes it is the first step toward him getting real help. And here is the other thread running through this entire story that deserves its own spotlight. She mentions going back to her therapy after a scheduled break. She mentions returning to her 12-step group because this whole situation triggered something in her. That detail is important. This is not just someone who got hurt and is moving on. This is someone who is actively taking care of herself in the aftermath of a genuinely traumatic betrayal, using her existing support systems, doing the actual work. That takes real self-awareness, especially when you are in the middle of grief. Because that is what this is. It is grief. 20 years of friendship, even friendship built on a foundation of lies, is still 20 years. The real friendship she thought she had does not exist anymore. But the feelings she had during it were real. The care she showed him was real. The time she gave him was real. And none of that gets returned to her. She does not get those years back. She just has to grieve the version of Dylan she thought she knew and accept that that person never actually existed. Here is my verdict, and I feel strongly about this. Dylan is not just a liar. Dylan is someone who weaponized the deepest forms of human compassion to keep people attached to him. He used cancer. He used a fake marriage. He used crisis after crisis to make sure the people around him stayed focused on him, stayed worried about him, stayed emotionally invested in his survival. That is not a quirky personality flaw. That is a serious pattern of manipulation that caused measurable harm to people who genuinely loved him. And the narrator handled this about as well as any person realistically could. She did not blow up at him in the moment. She took time to process. She coordinated with Sam. She gave his family the information they needed. She wrote him one honest, clear message explaining that she knew and that she was stepping away. She did not list every lie to his face. She did not try to extract an apology she was never going to get. She just told him the truth about where she stood and then protected herself. That is hard to do when your heart is broken. She did it anyway. The people who say she should have confronted him directly and given him a chance to explain are missing something important. She did not owe him that conversation. He had 20 years of chances to be honest with her. 20 years of moments where he could have dropped the act and just been a real person in a real friendship. He chose not to. Every single time, he chose not to. The conversation she had been hoping for was never going to happen because the version of Dylan who could have that conversation does not exist. She made the right call. She is going to be okay. Not immediately, and not without some hard days still ahead, but she is going to be okay. She has her therapy. She has her support group. She has Sam. She has Dylan's family, who clearly care about her enough to keep her in the loop. She has her own integrity, which is more than Dylan can say right now. And she has the knowledge that she walked away cleanly, without becoming cruel, without stooping to his level, without losing herself in the process. That matters. That is something to hold on to. drop a comment and let us know which story hit harder for you. And if you want more of this, a like and subscribe genuinely helps more than you know.